Welcome to Simon & Whiten, the podcast at the center of business, media, and politics. I'm Christian Whiten, joined as always by Mark Simon. Mark, please say hello. Mark, we have some headline data on inflation. It's not getting better. It's getting worse. 8.6% was the read for inflation in May. The previous read for the previous month was 8.3%. Analysts expected basically the same level, 8.3%. But investors and people flogging stocks on cable news were basically saying, well, maybe it's better. Maybe we're past the peak, as if the peak is something that just comes and goes and then we're all safe after that. But not only was it not better, nor was it stable, it was worse. The market reacted both before and the day before the news came out when rumors started to swirl that it was going to be worse. The market tanked again on Friday. This is not great news for people. 8.6% more for the same basket of goods now that they bought a year ago. I think it's actually worse if you look in reality. These numbers don't seem to reflect the true price of food and fuel and things that are coming out. So what do you think this means for finance and for politics?
I think this is very bad news for people, besides politics and finance. I mean, I am... Some of us are lucky and we do well in life. And when I go to the store, it doesn't really affect my purchasing, and I hit Costco once every couple of weeks or something like that. But when I talk to the people at Costco, and I do, I'm the bothersome individual that always asks stupid academic economic questions. And I had a really interesting conversation with a Costco, the manager, the guy who runs the store. And he said, they are starting to look at items that are much cheaper in terms of what people can afford. And Costco is basically, it's basically the Sam's Club for rich people with, small businesses. I mean, but right. It's not, it's more expansive than it used to be. But look, I mean, first of all, you're spot on. This 8.6%, a lot of it's driven by fuel. There's no doubt about that, but fuel goes into everything. So that's one of the arguments that boils my blood a little bit when somebody goes, well, it's really only gasoline. I said, yeah, the farmer buys gasoline, the tow truck driver buys gasoline. All these people buy gasoline. All these people have to go into these things. There's also massive wage inflation, and that drives up, when you go to the store, you're paying for the guy who, stocks the shelves. He's got to make more money, and that drives in. Look, I think politically this is a disaster. The best line I heard the other day, the guy goes, oh, June 6th. You mean when gasoline was $2.19 a gallon? January 6th, $2.19 a gallon. So, that's our January.
I'm going to steal that. That's actually very good.
It's a great line, but the thing is like people are hurting, and I think what we don't understand is, as I said, our elites are so freaking removed. I mean, sometimes you're lucky if you get someone like Maria Bartiromo on Fox and some of the other people who I think I'll even give Becky Quick a shout out over at CNBC. I see some, but when you see Andrew Sorkin or you see some of these other people on there, they have no connection. Some of these elite Wall Street Journal reporters who don't make as much as I don't know how they get that attitude. They don't make that much. And they live in the New York area. And they basically people are making choices about what they are buying to feed their family. Okay. People have always made choices, but when the basket's this big, okay, I'll do it. People are now deciding not to buy certain proteins. I'm not going to buy certain seafoods. That's a hard thing on families. And that's a hard thing on parents. And this is really bad. Politically, I think, unfortunately, for the Republicans, I think it's not good in one way. I'll tell you what. I think if we focused on this, it would be fine. But unfortunately, we have, and I'm going to get in trouble for this, we have this absolute tendency to go, because a lot of our punditry is not focused on economics, but on cultural issues. We have, for some reason, a desire, we're just as bad as the left in bringing it back to our issues. So it's the Marjorie, whatever her name is, down in Georgia, the Bohart. Fox is no help in a lot of this stuff because they're always looking for a hot button issue. Focus on inflation, focus on solving the economy, laser focus on that, and you'll be okay. But it's like a daily thing. I do not think the Republican Party has focused in on the economy the way they should. There's way too many issues. It's what you watch, like some of these other channels, you read some of these blogs. They are not focused on the economy. They are focused on every other issue, every other outrage, every other let's own the libs or something like that. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
They don't care. And the fact is, because they've become elites too. And I'm going to get in trouble for that. But if somebody watches, so that it's really problematic. And so
right. You're not running on an agenda really either. They're basically,
what's your agenda?
Yeah.
What's your agenda? Your agenda should be basically 2 chickens in every pot, that people can afford the pot and they can afford the chickens. And we're basically talking everything but that. You know what I'm saying? I mean, Fox is still running around every place. I'm critical of them because I think they basically really don't understand. I think they've lost the plot now. They get on it sometimes, but it's like I hate to quote Jon Stewart or Joe Rogan, when you got 24 hours a day to fill, you know what I'm saying? You're going to fill it with something. It should be nonstop focus on the economy. Our people shouldn't talk about anything else. McConnell and McCarthy shouldn't talk about anything else. I think McConnell will laser focus on it. But the fact of the matter is, decisions that people make on who they're going to vote for are made when? They are made basically by September.
Yes, sometimes even long before, more with presidential elections. I still, 3 decades later, lament that Bill Clinton was able to say that the early 90s recession was the worst since the Great Depression. Actually, it was the most shallow and short recession since the Great Depression at the time. Yep. And it was over, I believe, by 1991, maybe even by 1990. Now, the recovery was slower than it should have been. But as of late 1992, voters had basically still decided that George Bush was a recession president. And it worked for Clinton, unfortunately.
I'm going to tell you, and that's the whole thing. You're not going to get any help from these people. Okay. I mean, we should even be talking about urban crime, not to switch too much, but urban crime in the cities. That is a massively inflationary. People don't realize it. It raises the cost of everything. It raises the cost of personal security. It raises the cost of property security. It raises the cost of the city having to deal with things. So therefore, there's no chance of any type of other relief programs the city could undertake because they're always dealing with criminals running around. People don't realize, like, when there's a criminal incident, all those assets have to go down there and use. If there's a shooting on a street in New York City, fire, police, traffic, everybody has to go down there. Crime costs a lot of money. It also drives people out. It kills opportunities for people. It makes sometimes the suburbs and around surrounding areas more expensive because basically it's driving people into different solutions for their lives that they wouldn't have to do if you didn't have crime. San Francisco is the classic example. Chesa Borden, the son of cop killers, it's not his fault, but I mean, I can't believe Cuomo pardoned his father, who basically, let his father out.
All right, this is the San Francisco district attorney who just got bounced by voters. The fact of the
matter is, what he doesn't understand is he thinks it was all about criminal justice. No, it's about economics. Look who voted him out. If you look at the heat map, you look at the maps of who voted, the people who voted for him were the usual rich, white, elitist left-wingers. I use the term white elitist. Look at the district that voted for him. They love him. You know why? Because they've hired their own private security firms. They've got clout in City Hall to get cops down there. They know how to move people on. They live almost this clustered life, but they're going to inflict him on the Asian American community, and they're going to inflict him on everybody else. And those communities rose up and said no. They said, we're not going to take it. And that's why you really saw, I thought it was an incredibly encouraging sign. I think the future of our urban cities is when our next wave of immigrants take them over. The Italians and the Irish are spent. They've had their time in there. You know what I'm saying? Now we have all the elites moving back in there, doing the things. But when you see the disconnect, with people in Washington, D.C. with crime, in New York City with crime, these cities have a real problem. And, I even use that for the Asian American journalists who are elites,
Yeah. Yeah, they seem to drink the Kool-Aid or.
Oh, they drink the Kool-Aid totally. But I mean, no.
You saw this in New York, didn't you, where Mayor Adams, when he was elected, it was the opposite of what you'd expect. You'd expect Manhattan and the Upper East and West Side to be a little more conservative, heavy Jewish pockets on the Upper West Side, what's sort of left of WASP, New York, on the Upper East Side. But it was the opposite. It was the outer boroughs, more ethnic, that, with the exception of Staten Island, which Staten Island is actually more Republican, but it was Queens and Brooklyn, particularly Queens, that propelled Adams into the mayor's office. He's been a little bit disappointing. I guess I'm still willing to give him the benefit of the doubt, sorting through some very different politics. Of course, he's the mayor of New York, not the dictator of New York, has a city council to deal with, judges, big media, big special interest groups that are in favor of going soft on crime. But what do you think about him in general? What do you think about New York? Are you optimistic on New York or not really?
No, I think what's happened is, look, I have to tell you, I've always had this theory that, like, the smartest people, have you ever heard the thing, only a smart person could screw something up that badly? I mean, New York City is the same way. You can say what you want to say about Giuliani later in life, but Giuliani was a good mayor. People liked him. He cleaned the city up. He opened things up. He understood the economics of the mafia, having, 2 entrances to the fish market. You know what I'm saying? 4 entrances. The mafia couldn't control all the entrances, passing an ordinance that let, fruit vendors and everybody else stand in different spots, so the mob couldn't control that. The guy was smart. He has street smarts. But basically, was Giuliani a rocket scientist? No. But actually, Giuliani's a cigar guy, and I've smoked cigars with Giuliani a couple of times. And I think the thing that you see is that basically this is a guy who just wanted to get things done. He understood it. Mayor Koch was the same way. De Blasio was an elite. Bloomberg, actually, in fairness to him, was a guy who got things done too. He's a businessman. He gets things done. He knows how to move large organizations. Mayor Adams, I think his problem is, I think his instincts are good. I think, now, first of all, he does do this, I'm a cop. He was not really, I wouldn't say police. I think politics has been his career. Mm-hmm. He was a policeman who went into politics, and so he's really a politician. But he understands what police are up against. But the problem that you have is New York City, like a lot of places, there is an elite that, for whatever reason it is, and I think it's ego as much as anything else. I really think it's almost a sinful disease they have. But white elites do not care about communities of color. They really don't. The white left elites, it's all an experiment for them. It's all virtue signaling for them, and I have just come to the conclusion that New York City is going to have this upswing and revolution of basically the new immigrant class, new people coming in, and do things that I mentioned the Asian American journalist earlier. I actually was the one who launched Apple Daily USA. In other words, that was my job. I'd launch stuff, and then people would come in quickly. And so
this is the U.S. English language version of a media company that grew out of Hong Kong and Taiwan that was pro-democracy.
Also the Chinese language. I launched that. I hired the guys to put it up. Right. But I did focus group. I probably did 8 or 9 focus groups. And I still remember, maybe say I did 7 focus groups with, like, people we were targeting, things like that. Complete, all in agreement. Crime, economics, regulatory environment, real estate. They were always interested in. So we had a big real estate push, entertainment, really what I would call, and these are educated, successful people. Okay. Then I did one with basically all these US born Chinese Americans. Okay. Unfortunately, I don't know how it happened. I think we got into the wrong clique. But all of them, like, went to really good schools. You know what I'm saying? I don't think we have a Harvard guy there, but I remember we had a couple of Yaleys and, good schools. basically it was sitting down with a bunch of white left-wing liberals. Completely different. They basically have adopted, in their world, the way they get ahead is they go into that. And it's the same. There's a group called the Asian American Journalists Association. And I can talk about them because basically in the 2000s, 2010, 2014, I actually gave them money. Okay. I actually gave them money from Apple Diddy because we had some guys who were Asian American journalists. And our people went there and, you know, quite frankly, it's basically like one of the guys said to me. He said, you know, they're nice people. They're trying hard. And I think they should have their association. But they really do buy into the left-wing lines. If you look at all those journalists that say, well, why do I have to have an Asian American line? You don't have to have one. But let's just recognize you don't speak for the Asian American community. Stop Asia hate. Stop Asia hate. If you ever see who they get their money from, their whole thing is basically partisanship. The fact of the matter is we need to be honest about this. Asians who are attacked live in urban areas. The people who are attacking them are African Americans by and large. There's a few Twitter accounts. There's a few journalists like Damon Liu and a couple of others who actually point this out. Okay. Yeah. Nobody wants to hear that on the left. Nobody wants to talk about that. And Asian American journalists are failing their community by just basically going on along with the company line. And I use them as the most egregious example of when you go into New York City, you go into Washington, D.C., San Francisco, a lot of these urban places, the people who are really almost, I wouldn't say cheerleaders, but the most tolerant of crime tend to be white liberal elites. And a lot of the reason why is because they live in a world where it doesn't really affect them as much. You know, there's the odd, oh, somebody got a purse snatched, or there's the odd, but you know, they don't live with gunfire on their streets. They live in the right part of town. And they also more and more, I was really kind of shocked. I was up in New York the other day. I don't know if it was the Upper West Side or the Upper East Side. I can't remember. It was one of the upper sides. And I saw these private security guards walking around. And I was like, whoa, you know? So they basically, and here's the whole thing. I spent some time in South Africa. I'm old, but I was in South Africa in the 90s. Reminded me of that. Basically, the whites had their, you know, when I was in the Philippines, you know, I lived in the Philippines for a number of years, they have like their little villages. And that's the way it is.
And so they inflict these bad policies. You know, Chicago is sort of a perfect version in the sense that you have these left-wing activists, black mayor, but backed up by white elitist liberals who inflict the soft on crime policy. And so what do you have? You have blacks overwhelmingly victimizing other blacks, but you know, generally are propelling this crime wave. And it's like, you know, this all started with Black Lives Matter. So it's like, how is this helping Black lives or anyone's for that matter?
I think it's always just been, I think Monahan was, I would say, you know, Pat Monahan was the last guy who I think really gave a shit. And I think the rest of everybody, I think since that time, it's been like an academic experiment on what you can do to people. And so my hope is, it's one of the things I say in the Republican Party. I think every single time we get a chance to run a good minority candidate, you know, Herschel Walker is not the most, you know, he's not exactly my cup of tea and everything, but yeah, I'd support Herschel Walker because I think he basically brings our message out. There's this guy up in Illinois named Irvin who's running for governor, and he's doing pretty good. I think he's leading in the polls. And actually, they're so scared. The left is so scared of him. They're spending money in support of his opponents.
Yeah.
Because he's an African.
That's amazing for Illinois to be at risk, or California for that matter, now at risk with Caruso. I mean, that's Los Angeles. It's not the state. Statewide is still a disaster. But the fact that LA may put, you know, sort of in the same way they elected Richard Riordan when the wheels came off last time, late 80s, early 90s, that someone who until recently was a Republican, is a billionaire, is a land developer. These are, you know, the people that are sort of enemy number one in the pantheon of liberal enemies in California. It'll be a tight race, but he's going up against just a standard machine Democrat liberal. He's changed his party to Democrat, which I love. It's sort of like what Bloomberg did. Bloomberg, when he ran to succeed Giuliani, if I recall correctly, he sort of was like, well, the Republican side of this ticket is kind of crowded. Or no, excuse me, the Democrat one is crowded, and there's no one really on the Republican side. And Rudy's a Republican, so he just, I guess I'm a Republican. And he did that for as long as it was useful. So it's kind of fun to see someone doing it the other way in LA.
I mean, this is the point. There's actually a really good article by Jim Garrity in National Review where he basically tells the Democrats the same thing. Not to get off too much, but I actually do believe what he's saying. I've thought about it for a while. The Roe v. Wade decision, if the Democrats are smart, they may not be able to do it. But the fact is they got to start running people who represent the values of those communities. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of like Liz Cheney is getting killed in Wyoming. You know what I'm saying? Why is she getting killed? Not because I think in part because, you know, it's the Trump thing, but it's just become obvious to a lot of people that Liz Cheney doesn't represent the people of Wyoming anymore.
Yeah, she doesn't do public events there. I'm not sure. I don't know if she's flying private. No one sees her, you know, living in Colorado. A lot of times coming back on a Thursday or Friday from D.C., you'll see not only the Colorado delegation flying to Denver, but also the Wyoming delegation, sometimes Idaho, or sometimes they go through Salt Lake or Minneapolis. But yeah, no one's ever sort of spotted Liz Cheney around. She's, well, I mean, her constituents are the elite in Washington. She's from her constituent.
I mean, I have people ask me all the time how they can help Liz Cheney, and I'm like going, she's a representative of a state and of a district or whatever. Wyoming has one, right?
Yep, she's at large, the whole state.
She's at large. So the whole thing is like, you know, come on. I mean, all you got to do is represent your people, you know. I still remember the greatest line I ever heard was in Hong Kong, and I can't remember who said it, but somebody was giving this guy a hard time about why he was being tough on China. And he said, well, if you're from like the 10th district of Illinois, then I care what you think. But if not, I don't give a damn what you think. You know, and I think he was a Democrat. If I can't remember, he came out in a delegation, but I'm getting old. I can't remember. I should. It was fantastic because a couple of us started laughing, and somebody goes, that's awful. And I go, no, that's great. He knows his job. His job is those people. They elected him, you know?
Exactly.
And I think that overwhelmingly, you know, we have to, the Republican Party, you know, you've heard me complain about New Jersey. We nominated this very nice Italian grandfatherly type. Everybody loves Jack, you know what I'm saying, to run against Murphy. We had this wonderful Indian American guy. He would have won. Jack came this close. But the Indian American guy, basically, Jack was kind of trying to do a Youngkin, but he's a little bit too close to Trump for the place. Indian American guy, let's face it, there's a lot of people who said, hey, you know, I want to take this route. But I think you've got to start running people, and the Republicans, Liz Cheney doesn't represent her. He doesn't represent Wyoming anymore. So guess what? That's why she's down 38%.
Yes. Now, the only problem there is the only thing that matters is the Republican primary, and people have figured this out. So you have Democrats crossing over and multiple candidates. It's not just Liz versus one other person.
Yes.
It's Liz versus several. So there's still a chance. And, you know, one-party states have got to figure this out and have a runoff. If no one gets 50% in the primary, it would be weird to have a primary, a runoff, and a general, but it would be more representative. But so it's not a certainty, but it looks like her and her weepy friend Adam Kinzinger has already announced he's not even running again. So, you know, the media can talk up these dissidents in the GOP, but they're not. They have no support.
And I think the whole thing is it gets back to like the GOP. I mean, she's down there with the January 6th commission. And like I'm saying, she forgets that what people care about now. I was talking to the guys who were out. I got a new seal coat on the driveway, you know, and so I was out in a big job. I brought the guys out a bunch of iced tea, you know, a bunch of my little iced teas for them and talking to them. And, they're telling me the things. The guy told me, he said, look, this is costing you $250 more than it would have cost you 3 years ago. Because of fuel. And he said, then there's also the cost. He said, so yeah, it's costing more money. But these guys aren't really seeing it because, you know, when we talk about inflationary numbers, that's why it drives me crazy. You know, rent's been going up a lot too.
Yeah.
And also we're seeing a slight increase in mortgage rates. You know what I'm saying? So if someone's got an adjustable, you know, that's it. And rents are much more tied to adjustables. As a property owner, I can tell you, you know, I don't really lock stuff in for 30 years. You know what I'm saying? I mean, you know, and, you know, big companies especially are working on a 1-year float. You know what I'm saying? So as the rates go up, they got to raise to keep that margin. they got to raise interest rates. I mean, they got to raise rental rates, and so it hurts people all the way around.
Mm-hmm. One quick digression, since you spend so much time in Asia, is Japan. Because we talk about inflation, they are upset because inflation there is 2.5%. Of course, here, Jerome Powell, the Federal Reserve Chairman, would kill for that. So would Joe Biden. But it's high for Japan. Their target is 2%, but usually it's closer to 0%. Their Fed governor equivalent, the head of their central bank, got in a lot of trouble because he said, well, Japanese consumers are sort of eating this, and so it's okay. He had to apologize. I don't know if he had to do the bow on camera, South Korean style, but maybe that's coming. The yen is in the tank. In fact, Japan is still effectively closed for business travelers because the requirements are absurd. It's definitively closed for tourists, except they let in like 50 people on a tour. You have to have everything planned in advance. It's just not fun. No one's doing it. But usually I think of the yen trading about 110 to 120 per dollar. It's at 135 right now. Japan has had such stability. The LDP always wins. There was that one time in the early 2010s where you had a brief government of the Democratic Party. Do you sense anything stirring in Japan that may, disrupt that seemingly placid surface?
No, the problem I've always said in Japan is essentially the left is crazy. In other words, like they're not crazy on the woke issues and all that stuff, but they're crazy on foreign policy, on energy policy, on economic policy. So essentially, we've just got to we've come into this whole world of like yes minister politics. The old British comedy in Japan applies. Actually, a friend told me one time incredibly well. It's basically we're just going to go from Abe to this guy, all cookie cutters, all moving up. It's almost like a bureaucratic. There's no real thing. Now that said, now is a good time to buy some Japanese shares and back Japanese stocks. I'm not so sure I'd buy the currency and just play the currency. I think there's value in the companies. You know what I'm saying? And I would look for companies on the exchange, and I'd probably consider buying there. I'm not in Japan right now, but I started looking a couple of days ago. But look, there's some really strong Japanese companies. They got strong balance sheets. The only thing I would say is that I think that the Japanese have done a little bit better job than other countries in starting to address this immigration issue. That's why it's so disappointing. COVID is such a problem for people right now. And what I mean by that is that, basically it's messing up these mass migration movements that we're just starting to pick up. And we'll have to see, on my favorite, I beat up on Taiwan way too much. It looks like we'll get some good news out of Taiwan here pretty soon about like zero quarantine and things like that. They just got to get rid of the test. The U.S. just got rid of the test today. Good move by the Biden administration.
Finally.
Finally. Yeah, look, it saves you $50. I mean, it's expensive, when you fly back.
Yeah, it's expensive. It's stupid. You have a legal right to be here if you're a U.S. citizen. And also, as it turns out, we've already been through the pandemic here. There are already a couple of cases. Yeah. So if one or two sneak through on a plane, it doesn't change anything for anyone.
I've come back 6 or 7 times. I got to take out like 3 hours of my day to go to basically in Taiwan, when they give you the test, they're touching gray matter. They're way up.
You lose vision in one eye.
Yeah. You're like, all right, it's like, you start chanting with snakes or something like that. They're so far up there, but it's just, I think essentially I like Japan. And I also think Japan's turning into a bulwark in terms of the U.S. relationship. So I think that relationship is going to be very strong. It was not as strong as people think it was, actually. The last great relationship we had with Japan was probably under Bush. And that's just because the old school was there. But Clinton was good. But everybody was kind of looking towards China. And, we were ignoring our Japanese friends and our Japanese allies. But I think that's over now. And I think, we're coming back strong with them. But I myself, I think Japan's going to be fine. I also think, quite frankly, that they're going to open up pretty soon. And once they open up, it'll be a wonderful thing.
Yeah, hopefully after councilors' elections, that's their upper house, which, of course, has less power in the parliamentary system. I've never figured out why that happened, but that happens in July.
it's just that's what we're having to see. But I mean, it is you do see things, and it is something that, but there is drift. I mean, we were talking about the other people earlier, the Japan, we were talking about the Asian American journalists, how they get, they go with a certain way, but you just see this whole thing in the country and in the world. It's like people taking the path of least resistance in a lot of ways. And in Japan, what's the path of least resistance? Don't offend anybody. Just keep ourselves shut. No action. Taiwan, somewhat the same way. That's why I say you got to give Singapore credit, even the Philippines and some other places that are open up. They know they got to open.
Yeah.
And they got to do it. And even
Singapore clearly is sort of the global city of Asia now.
I think
the same way that Dubai is.
We have to pick. If we have to pick who survived COVID best, certainly in Asia, certainly it's going to be Singapore.
Right. And if you talk to people in Singapore, some are upset because, they were wearing masks outdoors until recently. I think they're still wearing them indoors. You see the Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin, talking to his Chinese counterpart at the Shangri-La dialogue, and they're both wearing masks. And you're like, what are these people doing? But it's also a function of Singapore was surrounded by places that were completely closed. So even if you could leave Singapore, there was no place to go. You couldn't go home to Australia or next door to Indonesia or Malaysia or Egypt. I mean, they were sort of stuck. But at least they tried and they succeeded.
No, I mean, I think the thing is that, to me, I'll give Taiwan credit in one thing here. They're actually, they're not. When Taiwan was going up in 25, 30,000, there was a lot of the KMT guys who were pushing for this. They were just trying to cause trouble. We have to close the borders. We have to do all these things. The Taiwanese people didn't panic. They just said, look, it's coming up. We know it's coming. We've been sitting here. I wish they'd open up and do a few things more. But there is something about the Taiwanese handling this that actually impressed me a little bit. They kept going. Everything's kept open. I talk to my people there every day almost, you know what I'm saying? And, they're working from home, but a lot of time the offices are largely open. The schools are trying to do what they can do. But the thing is like the Taiwanese actually, in many ways, toughed it out. They've been toughing it out. And I'll give them a compliment there for that. I think they did better. I have to say, I mean, you and I have always had this 5-year thing, will the Taiwanese fight or not? And this encouraged me in the direction that, they're not going to cut and run, because you didn't see the mass panic that, you did see in some countries. Hong Kong, for example, China. There's a lot of panic.
Right.
China's farcical. I mean,
it's unbelievable. I mean, it's just a slow motion train wreck where, we've always wondered when the CCP was going to screw up the economy, as centrally planned economies are always eventually screwed up by their governments. But it's just so clearly happening now. But don't take my word for it. Just look at GDP. Just look at, which are probably exaggerated anyway, exaggerated on the upside. Not looking good. And so now we can conclude that, actually China may never catch the U.S. in GDP.
I mean,
as we discussed in the last
think
episode.
The thing is, look, I have only one big prediction on this. I think that what COVID has done and the way they've treated people with COVID, what is happening now is they have basically dropped the gate for people leaving. In other words, everybody's kind of milling around. Am I going to stay? I can make a lot of money. What am I going to do? But then they were treated this way in COVID. And for a while, they were willing to tolerate it. But now they've seen what's happened with COVID. They've seen the crackdown. They've seen Xi Jinping getting more and more militant. And I think what's happened is the gate has dropped and they're leaving. And that's going to be one of their big problems. There's a guy who I follow. I can't remember Fu's first name, but there's a guy. Fu thinks that we probably see 200,000 mainland Chinese a year leaving. Professionals, not just everybody. Total number could be up to 400,000 just going to live in different places, but actual professionals leaving. I mean, what is it? 50% of the students that go overseas don't come back. How many students are overseas? 600,000. So, that's probably, depending if they're on a normal plan, that means 120. If they're on my college plan, it means a little bit longer. So, you stretch that number out.
Right.
But the thing is that I do believe that the gates are down now. And when people leave your country, That's always my greatest fun on Twitter when the China guys come after me. I go, oh, so you coming? You're not coming? Are you staying? And by the way, why don't you put your name on your thing? In other words, their entire argument can be defeated quickly just by the fact that people are moving with their feet,
right.
As in American cities, to bring that back again. And as in, I mean, it's amazing to me when you watch the markets. The markets just, people's actions tell you what they want to mean. I mean, my pet peeve at CNN and other places, I mean, I hate to go to CNN all the time, but, I was watching CNN go, oh, we're going to question whether we go to breaking news all the time or not. Who cares? Nobody cares about that. Oh, and the reason why is because essentially, internally, they don't care about their market. Zaslaw, who runs Discovery, doesn't care. I've come to that conclusion. I mean, they're never going to hire me, so I don't care. But I mean, they don't care. They don't care about their shareholders. They're getting killed. And the way they're getting killed by Fox and even MSNBC is just an embarrassment.
Yeah.
I mean, MSNBC is on a pattern. They know their pattern. CNN is an expensive operation that should be doing one thing and one thing only. They should be doing hard news. They should be the US BBC. They have a great global brand. They can do a lot of stuff with it, but no, they're going to let the woke people inside their companies take over, and news organizations have that problem.
It's so saturated in their culture now. Yeah. And, we saw this recently at the Washington Post, too, with, is it Felicia Sonmez? So, picking a fight with another Washington Post reporter who retweeted a sexist joke, mildly sexist joke that,
it wasn't a good joke. It was, it was kind of.
And, eventually she was shown the door. But, she also, the person she attacked is someone who defended her when she sued her employer, lost. Case was dismissed with prejudice. But I don't know. Do you think we're seeing the beginning of the end of this, this syndrome of woke mediocrities using whether it's Me Too or Black Lives Matter or just the sort of general intellectual McCarthyism, using it to get ahead? And successfully, now we see with Johnny Depp prevailing in his trial. You see 5 Georgetown professors of ethics basically writing to the university saying, you say you believe in free speech, but you don't, clearly. So choose one or the other. Is it the beginning of the end? Is it the end of the beginning? Is there a reason for optimism here?
I think the optimism is that people are fighting back and we realize what it is. Mm-hmm. Essentially, look, I'm still a boss of in 2 different companies. Of each company has more than 1,000 people. So, that's what I do. I manage people and I manage a business and I try to drive it forward. And I have been very quick. And when we had Apple Daily, Jimmy was very quick to notice people who had their own agenda. And most people's agenda is making money, advancing their careers and moving forward. And that's fine. I think the problem that has happened in U.S. companies. We haven't had the problem in Asian companies, and you really don't get the problem in many things outside of quote unquote the creative world. You know what I'm saying? The issues that you have really come down to the fact that people have been using this as an advancement. And I think what really happened when you have something like the Washington Post, everybody just kind of figured out we're all on her target list. I mean, Dave Weigel did defend her. He's a left-wing guy. You know what I'm saying? But he was, in her mind, white male, where this could have easily been handled. Where I remember I upset a journalist at Reuters, and she's a smart person, and she just sent me a note. She said, Mark, stop being a jackass. You know what I'm saying? And that was it. Now, of course, she had no hold over me or anything like that, but I was giving somebody a hard time, about something. And yeah, I mean, you have, it was a reminder that that's how you handle things. She should have probably went over and said, Dave, you know what? You better take this down and don't do this stupid stuff anymore. But no, she was looking for a target. I also think she was looking to get fired. I think she was hoping to get fired for this, and she did. But I didn't talk to him, but I saw some on a Slack channel where there's somebody I know, and one of the employment lawyers that we deal with, she said, she's not going to be in good shape with this, because basically if they take this to a judge or a jury, she initiated the fight publicly. So that's going to be a huge mitigating factor against her.
But, it didn't try any internal redress. But
the thing is, what's she trying to do? I mean, and she's got a history too. I'm very familiar with her and a guy named Cayman up in where she basically accused the guy of sexual harassment. And it was very confusing, really divided. Well, I shouldn't say it was basically, it seemed to me like 80-20. The China journalism community people were like, well, and she destroyed the guy. And she was trying to destroy Dave Weigel. And I think that's what's happening. People are waking up to the fact that someone's trying to destroy somebody. Look, I've had the commies come after me multiple times, you know what I'm saying? But theirs is such a weak stand, you know what I'm saying? But the other thing too is we're engaged in serious debate. We're engaged in serious matters, and all this wokeness, it finds itself in unseriousness. Back to my rant about the Republican Party. What's serious? What's serious for people is they're having to make decisions about what they feed their families. They're having to make decisions if they can go on vacation or not. They're having to make decisions about whether they drive someplace or not. All these things they're having to make decisions about. And we've got, the jackass crew defending, January 6th. You know what I'm saying? Which I'm fine with defending it. I'm fine. But to me, I think you just make a mockery of it, but move on. Keep going on. But you've got everybody else, and you've got the cultural warriors who want to talk about something. You've got, what's his name, that guy, Charlie Kirk or something like that. I'm still waiting for that scandal to break. There's got to be one there. I'm just telling you, it's not natural. TPUSSA, I'm going to get in trouble for that then again too, but I don't care. But the thing is like, you just see this, there's this whole media bubble, and it's CNN and everybody else there in it. And this guy who's running CNN, if he doesn't purposely walk in there, if you don't have a purpose in a media organization, you're going to drift left.
Yeah.
Or if you're like Steve Bannon, if you don't have a purpose, you're going to drift into crazy land. You know what I'm saying? Either way.
Right.
Okay. You got to have a purpose, and you got to figure out what your purpose is. And if your purpose, they always say, we want to be one of the finest news organizations there is. That's not a purpose. Your purpose is we want to get stories. We want to tell the truth. We want to do it right. And we're not interested in your personal outlook here.
Right. Right.
I mean, I think of Katharine Graham. I think of some of the other great editors. I just can't believe that there's some person came in and said, well, I feel bad about this or feel bad about that. It's one of the reasons actually I have a fondness for foreign correspondents much more. You know what I'm saying?
It seems to be a little more serious. That's actually, on the Trump transition, I co-authored a piece with Newt Gingrich saying, and it wasn't saying just deal with foreign correspondents, but saying forget about the daily briefing at the White House. That is your political opposition taking pot shots at you, whether you're the president or the press secretary. Just try and reach beyond that. Have run it like a cable show. So, here's a box with a reporter, whether it's a local correspondent from the U.S. or a foreign correspondent, people who will ask serious questions about things that are of interest to their local audience. Of course, the Trump administration didn't do anything like that. It sort of got there inadvertently at the end where they realized that Trump doing a dust off when he was walking a rope line to Marine One, or just talking basically to the camera guys less than, and you didn't have the reporters on camera, it worked better. But I think the people who are focused on politics and focused on political news are just not so domestically.
No, I mean, it's we come back to this, like, what companies you're looking at, what companies have dropped and things like that. But it's all about the economy. It's all about inflation. And I just believe when we look at someone like CNN or the Washington Post, the other thing too is about the Washington Post is like, where's Jeff Bezos? I mean, basically the Post loses money. Everybody knows this. Mm-hmm. Okay. It's not making money. So imagine going into some place and it's basically a wreck, a shipwreck. And then people are going to worry about like what's on the buffet. You know what I'm saying? In other words, like, come on, folks, let's get serious. And if you're a manager, I don't see that. That's one of the things I would criticize the management team about very much. I would criticize the management team about that, I would say to the management team, hey, you're losing money. That's your excuse. If somebody gives you a hard time, if one of these dillwad media reporters calls you up and says, well, what about this and the press freedom? Really? We're not going to have an open door if this keeps up. We're not going to be able to keep the doors open. We have to make money. We don't have time for this person. At the end of the day, it's all about the economics, as we've been talking. And they don't have time for this person. And CNN's going to find that out pretty soon, too. I think Malone is, and the problem is look who they put in charge. When you read about Chris Leck, he's always a regular guest in the Hamptons at this guy's house. Wrong. As soon as I read that, I'm going like, God doesn't have, he'll never have the stones to make the decisions. He'll always be calm.
Because it's this monoculture. You have it in Silicon Valley, but you have it in New York-based media too. So it's not that they've said, well, there's this conservative side and this conservative business model, and Roger Ailes discovered this tiny demographic called half of America and got rich by not abusing it, basically, and cultivating it to some extent. They don't even, that doesn't compute. They're just like, well, there's right and there's wrong, and there's cultured and uncultured, and we're cultured, right?
Well, I don't understand the desire to be liked by the right people. Like I go to this little deli down the road from us when I'm in the U.S. And then I've got a couple of places I go to in Taiwan. Everybody's nice to me. Everybody's friendly. We talk. They're just normal people. You know what I'm saying? But I don't understand this desire. Like people are always like, oh, I heard you weren't here. I heard you went. No, I'm never anywhere. I'm not interested. I'm not worried about what I go to. And I think that's the way you have to be in the media business. In other words, people go, oh, well, that's where you get all your scoops. If you're getting your scoops because basically you're hanging out with people, I can tell you right now, because you're getting used is what you're doing. So, in other words, I mean, there's more than a few journalists in the DC area who I've found to be quite good. You know what I'm saying? And I've kind of noticed all of them are not all that popular personally. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I don't want to name them because I don't want to hurt their feelings, but you don't see, they may go, of course they got to go to the White House Correspondents' Dinner with their companies. Yeah. But I mean, I just don't get it. I don't get it, but no, I think that's it. And that's my rant and my rave. And we might even want to cut this off. But anyway.
We will. We'll get to DocuSign in the next episode. I think there are going to be some interesting fallout from the market turbulence. So lots to talk about in the future. We also have what's going on at the Shangri-La Dialogue in Singapore. We'll see what the U.S. message to the Chinese is. I'll bet it's not that tough, but hope springs eternal.
Not from Austin.
That's right. Yes, but he'll have his mask on, so we're all safe. That's all the time we have for this episode of Simon White, and we'll see you again soon. Thanks.